My life as I knew it shattered the moment I saw my only son, David, step out of that gray pickup truck with his wife, Cassandra. The sight is etched into my memory with a sharpness that cuts me still. He looked so casual, so indifferent, as though what he was about to do was nothing more than a routine errand. And then I heard the words, those brutal, unforgettable words, that pierced through my chest like a blade. This is for our new house. You don't need this anymore. His tone was calm, almost dismissive, as though he were speaking to a stranger, not to the mother who had given him everything she had. They came into my home, the place where I had lived and loved and sacrificed for decades, as if they were looters. Cassandra walked in like she owned the place, her manicured hands pointing toward objects she wanted as though she were selecting produce at a market. Together they carried out my television, my refrigerator, the furniture that had once been carefully polished by my hands, and even paintings that had hung on my walls for more than 30 years. Every item was steeped in memories. Memories of my late husband, of raising David, of the countless nights I had fought loneliness with nothing but the hum of the sewing machine for company. And now they were tossed carelessly into the back of that truck like garbage. I stood frozen in the doorway, powerless, watching my son and his wife strip my life bare. My heart pounded in my ears louder than the sound of their footsteps. I wanted to scream, to grab David by the shoulders and shake him, to remind him who I was, mother, the woman who had bled and broken herself to build the foundation of his life. But my voice lodged in my throat, and instead, tears blurred my vision as they carried away not just my belongings, but every shred of security and dignity I thought I had left. When the truck was finally loaded, David climbed into the driver's seat, his jaw set, his eyes cold, while Cassandra perched beside him with a smirk of satisfaction curling her lips. They drove away with everything that had defined my world. But then as they reached the gates of the house they were so proud to call new, something happened. The truck screeched to a sudden halt, the brakes screaming in protest. I could see the hesitation in David's face even from a distance, as though a shadow of conscience had finally brushed against him. They sat there frozen, trapped between the weight of what they had stolen and the walls of their shiny new future. At that moment, a dark thought rooted itself in me, one I never imagined I'd entertain about my own flesh and blood. Never, in all my years, had I imagined my son would be capable of such cruelty. I am 73 years old, a woman who has lived half a century with her heart devoted to one purpose: him. David was everything to me. My husband had been taken from me in a terrible accident when David was just 15, and the grief of that day still lingers like a ghost in the corners of my memory. I can still recall the sound of the rain that night beating down against the hospital windows as if the sky itself were mourning with me. I came home drenched and broken, clutching my boy to my chest through my tears, whispering promises into his ear, promises that I would protect him, provide for him, and ensure that he never wanted for anything. At 23, I was a widow with nothing but sorrow in my arms and a child who became my sole reason to live. The years that followed were harder than I can ever put into words. I worked as a seamstress in that cramped little room at the back of our house. My fingers were soon covered with scars from endless needle pricks. My eyes grew weary under the flickering light of a yellowing bulb, but I kept stitching night after night as though the future of the world depended on it. Every stitch I sewed carried David's name. Every thread tied was tied for him. The sewing machine became my constant companion, its whirring song both a lullaby and a curse as it sang me into the early hours of morning. Sweet 16 dresses, school uniforms, curtains for neighbors, mended trousers, I sewed until my back bent and my fingers bled, yet every ache was softened by the thought that it was all for David. When he told me he dreamed of becoming an engineer, I didn't hesitate, not even for a heartbeat. I sold the diamond ring his father had given me on our wedding day, the gold earrings I had inherited from my grandmother, and even the delicate silver watch gifted to me on my first anniversary. Each item carried pieces of my soul, tokens of love and family history, but I handed them over at the pawn shop with shaking hands. I still remember the way the clerk eyed the little bundle wrapped in my handkerchief, unwrapping my treasures with careless fingers. $100, he said, as though he were doing me a favor. It was a fraction of their worth, at least in sentiment, but it was enough to pay for David's first semester. For 5 years, I lived bent over that machine, 12 hours a day, while David pursued his dreams. My hands became twisted, my knuckles swollen, my shoulders permanently stooped, but the pride in his voice when he called me, Mom, I'm learning so much. You wouldn't believe it, was worth every drop of sweat and blood. I endured sleepless nights, dragging my aching body to the window just to watch him study, bathed in the glow of his desk lamp. And my chest would swell with pride. He was going to be somebody. He was going to make it. And I, the lonely seamstress, would have given him the wings to fly. The day of his graduation is burned into my heart like a holy day. I wore my one fine dress, a faded wine red garment I had saved for years, the only elegant thing left to me after pawning nearly everything else. My applause rang loudest in the hall when his name was called, my hands clapping until they stung. He stood tall in his black gown, handsome and confident, and when he whispered, "Thanks, Mom," I never would have made it without you. As we posed for a photo, I believed it was all worth it. That picture still sits on my nightstand, a relic of what I thought we had. What I thought he felt, but life has a way of teaching cruel lessons, and I was blind to the truth until it was too late. Once David landed his lucrative job with a construction firm earning more than $3,000 a month, I thought our lives would finally blossom. I dreamed of repairing the crumbling roof, of painting the peeling walls, of traveling to places he had once spoken of as a boy. "I'm going to buy you a new house soon, Mom," he promised, his words like balm to my weary heart. But promises, I would learn, are fragile things, easily made, easily broken. Instead of freedom, what followed was a slow erosion of the bond we had shared. I kept sewing, kept saving, waiting for the day he would tell me I could finally rest. Yet as visits dwindled, his voice grew distant. The excuses piled up. Too much work, too many meetings, not enough time. And then came the day he arrived with trembling hands and a nervous smile, words that would change everything. "Oh, Mom, I want you to meet someone special," he said, and my heart leapt with naive hope. Perhaps I would gain a daughter, perhaps grandchildren, perhaps a partner who would help me grow old with some joy. But the moment Cassandra stepped through my door, tall and slender with her blonde hair perfectly coiffed and her long red nails gleaming like polished claws, I knew I had lost him. She wore a coral dress that must have cost more than my entire wardrobe and heels that clicked on my concrete floor like hammers pounding against my heart. Her eyes flickered across my humble home with a disdain she didn't even attempt to hide. "Imam, this is Cassandra," David said, his voice strange, as though laced with apology. I wiped my calloused hands on my apron, extended my arm, but she barely touched me, brushing her fingertips against my skin as though afraid I might stain her. Then she pulled a tissue from her purse and wiped her hand. I swallowed my pride and forced a smile. Please, sit down." "Oh, I'll make some coffee," I said. But from the living room, I could hear her low voice. "Michael, did you really grow up here?" The shame in my son's reply shattered me. "It's temporary, love. You know we're saving for our house." When I returned with coffee and the only porcelain cups I had left, she pushed the cup away with a smirk. "Thank you, but I don't drink coffee. Do you have organic green tea? Imported mineral water?" Her words mocked the poverty I couldn't hide. All I had was tap water, and when I admitted as much, she gave me that smile, that cruel, fake smile that didn't touch her eyes. The rest of that visit was torture. Every remark from her was a dagger wrapped in silk. "How long has it been since you painted the house? Is this sofa an antique? You don't even have air conditioning?" My son sat silent, embarrassed, as though I were the one who had failed him, as though I were the reason my home wasn't good enough for her standards. And then came the most cutting words of all. "Well, at least Michael doesn't need you to support him anymore. He earns enough to take care of himself." Her poison dripped into his ears day after day, week after week, until slowly, inevitably, David began to slip away from me. His hugs became cold, his smiles hollow, his visits dwindled, and when I called, Cassandra often answered, unanswered. "He's very busy, Mrs. Evelyn. I'll tell him to call you later." The lies piled higher, the manipulation grew thicker. I overheard her once whispering in his ear, "Your mom is very dependent on you, David. A mother who truly loves her son doesn't hold him back. She doesn't tie him down with guilt." Those words carved into me, each syllable a scar. I stood at the sink, trembling as I scrubbed dishes that were already clean, fighting the tears that threatened to expose me. "You can't keep being a mama's boy forever," she murmured, her voice as sharp as her red nails. And David nodded. Little by little, the son I had raised, the son I had sacrificed for, disappeared before my eyes. The distance between David and me grew heavier with each phone call. Youths. When I managed to catch him on the line, his voice was clipped, rushed, and impatient, as though every second spent speaking to me was stolen from something or someone more important. "How are you, my son?" I would ask softly, hoping for even a shred of the warmth he once had. Fine, Mom. Busy. I'll call you later." But those promised callbacks came less and less often until silence became the cruelest companion of my days. The house, once echoing with his laughter and footsteps, grew colder with each unanswered call, each hollow word. Duh. It was on a Tuesday morning, while I sat hunched over my sewing machine, embroidering the delicate lace of a wedding dress, a piece so fine it would take me weeks to complete, that I heard the sharp, unmistakable sound of high heels clicking against the pavement outside. The rhythm of those heels was unlike the steady tread of neighbors or the quick patter of children. No, it was deliberate, commanding, arrogant. My chest tightened as I set aside the fragile needlework. And then she appeared. "Hello, mother-in-law," Cassandra greeted me with that saccharine smile, the one I had already come to recognize as a mask stretched too tight across her face. Behind it lurked something venomous, something calculated. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her perfume filling the room before her presence did, sweet and suffocating. My pulse quickened, though not with joy. There was something in her tone that told me this visit was not about family, not about kindness, not about kindness. "You need to talk to you about something important," she began, her voice soft but laced with steel. She perched delicately on the very edge of my old sofa, careful not to let her coral dress brush against the worn cushions, as though afraid poverty might stain her immaculate clothes. "It's about David and me." My heart began to race. For a moment, foolish, naive as I was, I thought perhaps she had come to share good news, to draw me closer into their lives, to ask for my blessing or even my help. My throat tightened with hope as she continued. "We're getting married soon," she said smoothly, "and we've started looking at houses." My eyes instantly brimmed with tears of joy. The image rose unbidden in my mind. A wedding, white flowers, music, David smiling at me as I sat proudly in the front row. Perhaps even grandchildren, laughter filling the silence that haunted my home. I clasped my hands together, setting aside the embroidery I had been working on. "How wonderful!" I exclaimed, the words tumbling from my lips with genuine delight. "When is the wedding? How can I help?" My heart leapt like a bird set free, desperate to believe she was opening a door to me. But her smile shifted in an instant. Gone was the sweetness. In its place was some. She adjusted herself, folding her legs gracefully, one over the other, her pearl necklace catching the morning light. Her nails gleamed like polished weapons as she laced her fingers together. "The house we found is beautiful," she continued. "A 3 bedrooms, a large garden, and an exclusive neighborhood. It's exactly what we need to begin our life together. But," she let the word dangle in the air like bait on a hook, "it's very expensive. $200,000. Her eyes flicked over me with cool precision, measuring how far I would bend, how deeply I would sacrifice. I waited, unease creeping into me like a slow chill. "Although David earns well," she went on, her tone dripping with a kind of condescending patience, "we need to make some adjustments, some sacrifices for our future." I frowned slightly, confused, though I dared not let suspicion seep into my voice. "Adjustments?" Our smile widened, though it never reached her eyes. "Oh, Michael David spends a lot of money on you, visiting you, helping you, worrying about you." She spoke softly, almost sweetly, but each word was tipped with poison. "And we need every penny if we are going to secure the life we deserve." A mother who truly loves her son would want him to prosper, wouldn't she? The words hit me like a strike across the face. My lips trembled as I answered, "Of course I want him happy. I've always wanted nothing but the best for him." Cassandra nodded slowly, like a teacher indulging a slow child. "Then you'll understand that it's time for you to stop being a burden." She let the word linger as though savoring its sting. Michael needs to focus on his new family, not be constantly distracted by his mother. A burden, I echoed, my voice cracking. The room spun faintly around me. My hands, rough from decades of labor, clenched in my lap. You have never been a burden to David. I gave him everything I had. My youth, my health, my soul, so he could study, so he could live well. Everything I did for him. But she only tilted her head and gave me that cruel little smile, the one I was learning to dread. Oh, mother-in-law, she purred. This isn't about the past. The past is irrelevant. This is about the present, about the future. David is no longer a child who needs his mommy. He has responsibilities now, with me, with the family we're building. You must see that. Her words pricked me like 1,000 needles. My chest tightened until it was hard to breathe. But I only want to be part of his life, I whispered, tears welling. I don't ask for much, just for him to visit, to call now and then, to remember that I still exist. Cassandra sighed, exaggerated, as though I were being impossibly difficult. That is exactly the problem, Mrs. Evelyn. You don't understand. Michael no longer belongs to you. He belongs to me now. To me. Her words struck me harder than any physical blow could have. My breath hitched. Children don't belong to anyone, I murmured through trembling lips. I love him, but I've never tried to possess him. He is his own person. She laughed then, a dry, mirthless laugh that rattled in my ears. Really? Then why is it that every time Michael wants to do something with me, you appear with some need, some problem, some tearful reminder of all your sacrifices? Why do you insist on chaining him to the past? Oh, that's not true. I tried to protest, but she silenced me with a dismissive flick of her manicured hand. Michael tells me everything, she continued, her tone low and merciless. He tells me how you constantly remind him of the jewelry you sold, of the nights you worked until your hands bled, of all the sacrifices you made. That is not love, Mrs. Evelyn. That is emotional blackmail. And Michael is tired of it, tired of carrying the guilt you place on his shoulders. The ground beneath me seemed to collapse. Was that how he saw me? Did he truly resent the memories I held so dear, the very foundation of our bond? I thought they were testaments of love, of a mother's devotion. But now doubt coiled through me like a serpent. Perhaps I had clung too tightly, reminded him too often, without realizing how heavy those memories had become for him. I see you're beginning to understand, Cassandra said softly, her eyes glinting as she read the anguish etched on my face. He needs to be the man I require him to be. And you, with all due respect, are standing in the way. And you keep him tethered like a child, forcing him to choose between you and me. She rose gracefully from the sofa, moving toward the window, her silhouette framed against the morning light. She looked out at the street as though my modest home was beneath her notice. Her disinterest in the very walls that sheltered her fiancé's childhood spoke louder than her words. My voice broke as I whispered, "What do you want me to do?" The question left my lips like a confession, my body trembling as if I already knew the answer would strip away the last piece of dignity I had left. Datta's smile that day was a masterpiece of cruelty, a perfect imitation of warmth that never touched her eyes. "It's very simple, mother-in-law," she said, her tone dripping with condescension, as if she were a queen explaining the obvious to a servant. "Give Michael the space he needs. Stop calling him all the time. Stop asking him to come visit you. Stop making him feel guilty for having a new life." She let the words hang in the air like a death sentence, then leaned back ever so slightly, calculating her next strike. "And most importantly," she added, her voice sharpening into a knife, "stop depending on him financially." Her words hit me like a slap across the face. Financially? I echoed, startled, my throat tightening. But I don't depend on Michael. I work. I support myself. Rebecca laughed, that same cold, brittle laugh that always made my stomach twist. "Oh, please, Mrs. Julia, don't play dumb. Michael told me he helps you with the house bills, that he buys your medicine, that he gives you money when you need it. That has to stop." The truth, of course, was more complicated. Yes, Michael had helped me. He insisted. In fact, when the old heater wheezed its last breath in the dead of winter, he had shown up at my door with a new one, smiling with pride as he installed it. When I caught a violent flu and the doctor prescribed medication I couldn't afford, he'd press the pills into my hand before I could protest. None of it was at my request. It had been his choice, his love. He helps me because he wants to, I whispered, almost to myself, the words weak and unconvincing. That's what you think, Rebecca said cruelly, her lip curling with disdain. But Michael tells me he feels obligated to take care of you because you're always reminding him how lonely you are, how difficult it is for a woman your age to get by. That's emotional manipulation, Mrs. Julia. Nothing more. Her accusation sliced deeper than any insult ever had. Emotional manipulation. Was that what she believed my love to be? Was that what my son thought too? I felt the floor tilting beneath me as doubt sank its claws into my heart. Had every tear I shed, every memory I shared with Michael, really been nothing but chains I had fastened around his neck? Memories I thought were precious. Our shared hardships, my sacrifices, the laughter we clung to when we had nothing. Were they to him nothing more than guilt? Rebecca saw the storm on my face and smiled, satisfied like a predator circling wounded prey. She leaned closer and pressed her manicured hand onto my shoulder, the touch cold and alien. If you truly love him, she murmured, her voice soft now, venom wrapped in silk, you'll let him go. You'll stop suffocating him. You'll give him to me so he can be the man he's meant to be. The man he's meant to be. And if I do this? I asked, my voice barely audible, breaking apart like glass. If I step back, if I refuse his help, if I stop calling, he'll be happy? Her grin widened, revealing the true victory behind her mask. Of course he will. Michael and I will build a beautiful life together. We'll have children, home, adventures, everything he deserves after working so hard all these years. And you, her eyes glinted with malice. Well, you've already lived your life, haven't you? You had your husband, you had your husband, you had your son, and your role is finished. Now it's his turn. The cruelty of those words hollowed me out. For the first time, I saw the unguarded truth beneath Rebecca's perfect exterior. She wanted me erased, scraped clean from Michael's world. She walked to the door with her usual poise, her heels striking my wooden floor like gavel knocks. Just before leaving, she turned, her expression all faux grace. I hope we can be a happy family, mother-in-law. But that will only happen if you understand your place. Then she was gone, leaving me in a silence so heavy it pressed against my lungs. I sat for hours on the worn sofa, staring at the window as daylight bled into dusk, my mind replaying her words over and over until they carved wounds into my chest. Had I been suffocating Michael? Had my love become chains? By the time night fell, my doubts had grown teeth, Hadegger teeth. I lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, dissecting every recent conversation with my son. Was his kindness truly born of love or of duty? By dawn, a decision had begun to take shape. If Rebecca was right, if my son felt shackled by me, then the most selfless thing I could do was step back. Because what kind of mother would I be if I let my love stand in the way of his happiness? The weeks that followed became my silent torment. I began pulling away from Michael with careful precision, slicing our connection one thread at a time. When he called, I forced my voice into a cheerful mask, but kept the conversations short, superficial. When he asked to visit, I made excuses, my sewing deadlines, sudden errands, fatigue. When he offered money, I smiled and refused, pretending I no longer needed it. Every lie scorched my tongue, every rejection shredded my heart, but I convinced myself it was the only way. Michael noticed, of course. Mom, are you okay? You sound different, he asked more than once, worry lacing his voice. I'm perfectly fine, sweetheart. Just busy with orders. The dresses won't sew themselves, I said lightly, each word a dagger I twisted into myself. He hesitated. Why don't you want me to visit? We haven't seen each other in weeks. For a moment, I almost broke. The words felt like surrender, like the last thread of dignity snapping between my fingers. You can take what you need. I forced out a fragile, almost strangled, a thanks, Mom, from Michael's end of the line, his tone brimming with boyish delight as though I had just handed him the world on a silver platter. Samir. He sounded like a child unwrapping the gift he had begged for on Christmas morning, not like a man taking the very soul from his mother's home. The enthusiasm in his voice, genuine and unshaken, tore through me more than cruelty ever could. When the call ended, I lowered the phone slowly, my hand heavy, as though gravity itself conspired to anchor me in my sorrow. I sat down on the worn sofa, its cushions molding to my body as they always had, and I looked around my living room, the room that had cradled decades of memories, soon to be hollowed out like a carcass. My gaze fell on the television first, the one where Michael and I used to curl up together every Sunday afternoon, watching his favorite cartoons when he was small, then movies as he grew older. That television wasn't just an object, it was the fireplace of our little family, the glowing heart around which warmth gathered. And soon it would be gone. My eyes drifted to the refrigerator, solid, reliable, purchased by his father back when Michael was still in diapers. I could still hear his father's voice, steady and confident, saying, "This way, our family will never go without. We'll always have enough to eat." That promise had been stitched into the hum of the appliance for over 20 years, a quiet, constant reassurance in the background of my days. Soon that hum would cease. Then there were the paintings, 3 of them, chosen with such laughter and love during our first wedding anniversary. We'd strolled through a little gallery downtown, still so foolishly in love, so sure that the years ahead would be endless. Those paintings weren't just colors and brushstrokes, they were our vows hanging on the wall, proof of a life we once dreamed of building together. And now, like everything else, they were to be stripped from me. That night, sleep became a stranger. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling as shadows shifted in the corners, and my mind played out scenes of what was to come. I imagined my house barren, echoing with silence after the television was gone. I imagined myself fumbling each morning to buy food, day by day, like some frail, forgotten widow, because my refrigerator would no longer be there. I imagined the walls, pale and naked, bearing the scars of absent frames, their emptiness mocking me, reminding me at every glance that even my memories had been repossessed. But worst of all, I imagined Rebecca. I imagined her walking through her new home, laughing in triumph as she placed those cherished objects in her own rooms, draping my memories over her life as though they belonged to her. The thought curdled inside me until it made me physically ill. The following days stretched like funeral processions. Every glance around my home was another goodbye. I would run my fingers over the television screen, leaving faint trails in the dust, remembering the sound of Michael's laughter ringing through the room when he was a boy. I opened and closed the refrigerator as though trying to trap the years of meals and midnight snacks within it, as if closing the door one more time could keep them safe. I sat before the paintings in silence, my eyes drinking in every line, every hue, trying desperately to memorize them before they were taken from me. Michael didn't call again in the 2 weeks that followed. Not once. Perhaps he was busy planning move. Or perhaps, more likely, Rebecca had instructed him to stay quiet, to leave me alone with my dread so the separation would come like a final blow rather than a gradual drift. Each day of silence gnawed at me, carving deeper holes inside me. I did not know when they would come, or what else they might decide to take, or whether Michael would have the decency to come himself or send only his wife and strangers. I tried to distract myself with sewing, the one thing that had always steadied my hands. But my fingers shook so violently that my stitches went crooked, forcing me to rip out seam after seam, watching the thread unravel like my composure. My concentration had splintered. My heart felt like shattered glass, and my eyes blurred constantly with tears that blurred my vision. Even my neighbors noticed the decay. Clients, too. Mrs. Julia, are you unwell?" They asked gently, frowning at my sloppy work. My body had grown frail. Food had no taste. Food had no taste. I shrank in the mirror until the woman staring back looked gaunt, her face hollowed by grief. One morning at the market, Mrs. Linda, my kind neighbor, peered at me over a stack of tomatoes and gasped softly. "Julia, are you sick?" she asked, concern threading her voice. No, I lied, summoning the weak curve of a smile. Just a little tired from work. But Linda wasn't fooled. She had known me too long. Her eyes searched mine, and I could see her reading the exhaustion carved into my features. She reached out, squeezing my arm. "And Michael? I haven't seen him around in some time." I swallowed hard. "He's married now," I said, my throat tightening around the words. "Be busy with his new life." Linda nodded, murmuring something about how children grow up, how they never stop loving their parents. Her hand lingered on mine. Her words were meant to comfort, but they pierced me like glass. If only she knew the truth. If only she knew my son was about to strip me of everything I had left. If only she knew his wife had already erased me from his life, and now she wanted to erase me from my own home too. But I couldn't tell her. Saying it aloud would make it too real, too final. And then the day came. It was a Tuesday morning, bright but cold. I heard the rumble before I saw it, the harsh metallic roar of a truck engine, the clanging of chains, the low groan of gears shifting. I froze, my blood running cold. Then I peeked through the curtains, and there it was, the truck that had come to gut my life. Michael stepped out first, looking older than I remembered, but wearing an expression that made him feel like a stranger. Beside him were two broad-shouldered men, hired hands carrying straps and ropes. And then behind them she arrived, Rebecca, in a gleaming silver sedan, polished until it reflected the morning sun like a blade. She emerged gracefully, her sunglasses masking her eyes, her blouse golden and gleaming like armor, her ponytail sleek and deliberate. She looked like someone walking into her kingdom. My heart pounded, my palms slick. "We brought help to make it faster." He gestured to the men. "We don't want to bother you for too long." The words sliced me open. My very presence, my home, my life, now a bother. Then Rebecca glided toward me, her lips stretching into a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Hello, mother-in-law," she said sweetly, the venom disguised by politeness. "How exciting. We'll finally be putting all of this to good use." All of this? As if she hadn't already taken my son, his loyalty, his time. The workers looked to her, not me. "Where do we start, ma'am?" First, the television, Rebecca answered crisply, stepping into my living room like she owned it. "That will be perfect in our main living room. Then the refrigerator. Careful with it. It's heavy." I stood in the doorway, paralyzed as strangers unhooked the veins of my home. Michael busied himself with the cables, his eyes avoiding mine as if looking at me would scorch him. "And these paintings?" Rebecca's voice rang out, her finger pointing to the landscapes my husband had chosen with love. She touched the frame lightly. "They'll look gorgeous in our dining room." They're delicate," I managed to murmur, summoning courage from somewhere deep. "Me husband bought them on our honeymoon." Rebecca glanced at me through her dark glasses, lips curled in condescension. "Don't worry, we'll take good care of them. This way they'll still be part of the family." "Not my family," I thought bitterly. "Yours." One by one, they stripped my house bare. The television lifted away like a coffin, the paintings wrapped in blankets like corpses, the refrigerator dragged out like a heart torn from its chest. Rebecca's voice cut through it all, smug and triumphant. "This is for our new house. You don't need this anymore." When it was over, Michael finally approached me. He couldn't even meet my gaze. "Mom, thank you. This means a lot to us, especially to Rebecca. She's so excited." "I'm glad you're happy," I whispered, though each word felt dipped in acid. "You're the best mom in the world," he said quickly, hugging me again, a hollow embrace. "We'll visit soon." But we both knew it was a lie. Rebecca had one. I watched from the doorway as they loaded the last of my memories into the truck, as Michael waved from the passenger seat, his face a fleeting shadow of sorrow. And then, with a roar of the engine, they were gone. What remained was silence. A silence so heavy it pressed against my chest, echoing through the empty walls, magnifying every creak and tick of the house until it sounded like ghosts. I wandered from room to room, staring at faded rectangles on the walls where the paintings had hung, at the empty corner in the kitchen where the refrigerator once stood, at the bare stand where the television had sat. Each absence screamed louder than any presence ever had. The house was gutted, yes, but it wasn't just my home they had emptied. It was me. The milk soured within hours of buying it, curdling into an acrid sludge that stung my nostrils whenever I opened a small carton. Vegetables browned and wilted overnight, their freshness no match for the relentless heat of a kitchen stripped of its refrigerator. Many nights dinner was nothing more than dry bread softened with weak tea, each bite catching in my throat because there was no love, no comfort left in preparing a meal meant for no one but myself. I ate like a beggar in the shell of a house that had once echoed with laughter, the crumbs sticking to my fingers like reminders of how little remained of the life I once held together. Mrs. Linda, ever watchful, was the first to voice the things others had probably already whispered about. One afternoon, she came knocking with her familiar cheer, asking for a scoop of sugar as she had countless times before. But her eyes roved too quickly, too curiously across the hollow spaces where my belongings had once lived. "Julia, what happened to your television?" she asked casually, though I caught the flicker of suspicion in her gaze. "I always see the light from it in your living room. Lately, it's been dark." The truth rose to my lips, but curdled there, too humiliating to release into the air. To release into the air. It broke. I lied stiffly, my tongue heavy with shame. I took it to be repaired, but Linda, with her hawk's eyes, had noticed more than I wanted to believe. She had seen the truck that morning, the strangers in my doorway, my son's quick, shame-faced hugs. Her eyes slid to the kitchen. And your refrigerator broke too? She pressed, feigning surprise, but clearly seeking confirmation of what she already suspected. Heat rushed to my face. I stammered, clinging to another lie like a drowning woman clutching driftwood. I'm remodeling. Michael is going to help me pick out new appliances. The words were bitter, like swallowing glass, but safer than the humiliating truth that my son and his wife had emptied my house as though they were clearing away debris. Linda gave a polite nod, but her silence spoke louder than any question. The nights grew unbearable. Without the comforting hum of the television, the house was a void of noises I'd never noticed before. The groan of shifting wood, the rattling breath of the wind sneaking through loose panes, the insistent ticking of the clock that measured my endless solitude. Light bulbs glared too harshly in the stillness, so I often sat in the dark, my thoughts swirling into self-accusations. Had Rebecca been right? Had my love been a smothering weight that drove Michael away? Every memory twisted into a blade. The times I had asked him about his health were those not concern, but manipulation. The sacrifices I reminded him of, had they been daggers of guilt rather than truths of devotion? The more I dissected my past, the more I convinced myself that I had carved the distance between us with my own trembling hands. Weeks dragged like wounded animals crawling through dust. Michael's silence was worse than cruelty. It was annihilation. No calls, no check-ins. Not even the courtesy of a text. After taking my possessions, he had taken the last fragile thread of contact and cut it clean through. Each day I faded a little more, my body growing weaker, thinner. My clothes sagged like drapes on a brittle frame, and when I caught sight of myself in the mirror, I saw not Julia, the woman who had once laughed with her son, who had once loved with reckless youth, but a sunken gray ghost whose eyes had hollowed into pits of endless nights. Even my sewing, my last refuge, betrayed me. My hands trembled too violently to guide the needle. My vision clouded with tears until stitches wandered like crooked scars. Dresses came back to me with complaints. Buttons uneven, hems jagged, seams sloppy, a missus. Julia, this hem is completely crooked. One client snapped, holding her daughter's dress aloft as though it were evidence in court. If this isn't the quality you used to deliver. Her words, though true, slashed at me with more cruelty than she realized. The coins I earned dwindled to nothing. My savings bled out in days, poured into groceries I couldn't preserve. I was sinking, and there was no hand extended to pull me up. One sleepless night, desperation made me reckless. With fingers trembling, I dialed Michael's number. The rings echoed in my ear like distant drums, and when the line finally connected, my breath hitched. But it was not my son's voice that answered. It was hers. Hello? Rebecca's tone was clipped, laced with irritation that I dared disturb her evening. Rebecca, it's Julie. My voice came out thin, a ghost of itself. I need to speak with Michael, please. A long pause. I could imagine her eyes narrowing, her lips curling into that cold, dismissive smile. Finally, her voice dripped through the line. Michael is busy, Mrs. Julia. What exactly do you need? Shame rose hot in my throat, but hunger and loneliness broke through my pride. I need help with a few things, I whispered. Without the refrigerator, I can't keep food. Without the television, the nights are unbearable. Please, just let me talk to him for 5 minutes. He's my son. I have a right to. But she cut me off, her tone now a blade. Michael is sleeping. He has a very long day at work tomorrow. And besides, didn't you tell us yourself you didn't need those things anymore? You can't change your mind now. The line went dead. I stayed there with the receiver pressed to my ear, listening to the static, my hand frozen, my heart cracking open like a brittle shell. My son hadn't even been given the chance to hear my voice. Rebecca had spoken for him, blocked me like a nuisance call. That night, I cried until I had no tears left, until my body shook with dry, heaving sobs. The humiliation carved deeper than any wound. I was not only abandoned, but dismissed, erased, treated as if I no longer had the right to exist in the life of the boy I had raised. Days turned to weeks. Weeks to months. My life unraveled into a gray monotony of hunger, silence, and humiliation. My savings vanished. My sewing dried to a trickle. Some nights, my stomach growled like a caged animal, and I pressed a pillow against it to muffle the sound. I became skeletal, my face hollow, my hair unkempt. The house was my coffin. Each step echoed like a funeral march. When Linda finally brought me a steaming plate of chicken and rice, her eyes soft with concern, I nearly wept at the scent. Julia, I thought you might like a meal, she said gently. My stomach growled so loudly it betrayed me, and her eyes widened with grief. When was the last time you ate? She asked. I couldn't answer. The true 3 days of nothing but stale bread was too shameful. That night, I devoured the food as if it were a banquet, each bite both salvation and humiliation. I had hit rock bottom. I was nothing more than a shell, a forgotten woman waiting for death in a house stripped of love. The letter arrived. It was an envelope unlike any other, thick cream colored, with my name written in sweeping calligraphy that made my heart skip. A law firm's return address glared from the corner, and panic clutched me. I braced for debt collectors, lawsuits, eviction. With trembling hands, I slid it open, each second stretching unbearably. Inside, there were 2 papers. The first, a formal notice from a lawyer named Mr. Martinez. The second, a personal letter in handwriting I recognized instantly, though decades had passed since I last saw it. My breath caught in my throat. My vision blurred with tears before I even reached the signature. Vincent? Vincent Herrera. The name alone was enough to collapse 50 years of time, to summon the 17-year-old girl I once was, the girl who had walked hand in hand with him under blooming jacarandas, who had whispered promises of forever into the dusk. My fingers shook as I traced his elegant script. "In me, dearest Julia," it began. "After so many years of searching, my private investigator has finally found you. You cannot imagine how many nights I have thought of you. How often I have wondered what became of the most beautiful, kind-hearted woman I ever knew. Each word wrapped around my starved heart, filling the cracks Rebecca and Michael had carved." Vincent confessed he had never stopped loving me. He wrote of his wife, now gone after a battle with cancer, of her confession that she had always known a part of his heart belonged to someone else. "She made me promise," he wrote, "that after her passing, I would seek the happiness I had denied myself. And so I searched for you." Tears blurred the ink. After decades of invisibility, here was someone saying I was unforgettable, desirable, loved. He included a photograph, an older man, silver-haired, elegant in a dark suit, with eyes that still gleamed with the kindness I remembered. A shy smile curved his lips, the same smile I had fallen in love with before life tore us apart. He ended with a plea. "If you wish it, Julia, let us meet. Let us build what time we have left. I promise, with whatever years remain, I will make you happy." I read it 3 times, my heart pounding as if I were young again. The house no longer seemed so dark, so suffocating. For the first time in months, I felt alive. At dawn, with the courage I thought I had lost forever, I dressed in my lavender best, fixed my hair, and walked to the public phone at the corner. My hand trembled as I dialed Mr. Martinez's number. "Good morning," I whispered when the line connected. "This is Julia Morales." I received a letter from Mr. Vincent Herrera, and I would like to see him. There was a pause, then a warm, relieved sigh on the other end. "Mrs. Morales," the voice said gently, "Mr. Herrera will be so very happy to hear you called." "He has been waiting by the phone for days," Mr. Martinez told me with a smile that seemed to carry both relief and excitement. "Would it be all right if we meet this afternoon at my office to arrange the details of the meeting?" he asked. The words rang in my ears like a bell, summoning me back to life. That afternoon, I walked to Mr. Martinez's law firm with a mix of nervousness and hope I hadn't felt in decades, feelings that made me tremble like a girl on her very first date. I wore my lavender dress, the only one that still fit me after so many weeks of weight loss, and I tried to tame my hair in front of the cracked mirror. My reflection stared back, fragile but determined, a ghost of the woman I once was, clinging to one last chance at dignity. When I reached the tall glass building in the city center, my knees nearly gave out. The lobby was filled with men and women in polished suits, shoes shining like mirrors, their voices clipped, efficient, belonging to a world I had never been invited into. I felt small, misplaced, like a ragged bird that had stumbled into a palace. My palms were sweaty as I entered the office, my heart hammering against my ribs. The room I stepped into was nothing short of majestic. Mahogany furniture polished to a deep glow, Persian rugs soft beneath my thin shoes, windows so vast they framed the entire city as though it were Vincent's to command. I lowered myself into a leather chair, terrified that the dampness of my hands would leave stains upon something worth more than everything I owned. Mrs. Morales, Mr. Martinez greeted warmly, his voice cutting through my storm of insecurity. He rose, shook my hand firmly, and smiled with such genuine kindness that for a moment my trembling ceased. You don't know how happy I am to finally meet you. Mr. Herrera has spoken of you so often, I feel I already know you. Does he? Does he truly want to see me? I asked, my voice breaking, the fear of disappointment weighing on every word. The lawyer nodded, his eyes lighting with sincerity. In my 30 years of practice, I have encountered all manner of human stories. But rarely, Mrs. Morales, have I seen a man move to tears of joy when told that we had finally found someone. Mr. Herrera wept that day, like a boy reunited with a lost treasure. Tears stung my eyes at his words, warming the barren corners of my heart that had known nothing but cold silence for months. The lawyer reached into a drawer and slid across an elegant envelope. Mr. Herrera would like to invite you to dinner tomorrow evening at the Palace Hotel. He has already made every arrangement, the transportation, the reservations, anything you might need. All you need to do is say yes. My fingers shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was not only a handwritten invitation, but a check for $500. The sight of so much money left me dizzy, as though I had stumbled into a dream too fragile to be real. Oh, what is this? I whispered. Mr. Herrera insists you buy a new dress for the occasion, Mr. Martinez explained gently. He says you must feel like a queen, because that is how he has always seen you. The lump in my throat threatened to choke me. It had been so long, so unbearably long, since anyone had considered my happiness, my comfort, my worth. You can't accept this? I protested weakly. It's too much. Mrs. Morales, the lawyer, leaned forward, his expression earnest. Mr. Herrera is not only a wealthy man, he is a man who has carried a torch for over 50 years. Please, let him honor you. Allow him this small gesture, for it means far more to him than the money itself. I left the law office that day with the envelope pressed to my chest, my heart in a turmoil of joy and terror. For the first time in months, hope flickered like a timid flame inside me, but fear whispered in equal measure. What if Vincent sees me as I am now, gray, wrinkled, hollowed by grief and poverty, and recoils? What if he regrets finding me at all? Still, I resolved not to let insecurity destroy what fate had miraculously returned. The following morning, I made my way to the city's most elegant shopping mall, a cathedral of marble and glass I had never dared to enter. My steps echoed, timid yet determined, as I wandered through aisles of glittering displays, gowns shimmering beneath soft lights like jewels. When I entered a boutique, the young saleswoman eyed me with a flicker of disdain, her voice polite but detached. Can I help you? Yes, I said, summoning a courage I didn't quite feel. I need a dress for a very special dinner, something dignified, something beautiful for a woman of my age. Her initial indifference melted when I produced the check. Yeah. Suddenly, she was all warmth and attentiveness, guiding me through silken fabrics and delicate laces. I tried on gown after gown until she brought me a coral-colored dress that seemed to shimmer with its own light. When I stepped before the mirror, my breath caught. The dress clung gently where I was thin, softened my frailty, and seemed to bring a glow back to my skin. For the first time in what felt like forever, I looked at my reflection and saw not a discarded old woman, but a lady, dignified, radiant, worthy of being seen. You look stunning, the saleswoman murmured sincerely, adjusting the hem. That man of yours won't be able to take his eyes off you. Afterwards, she sent me to a nearby salon where a stylist with confident hands studied my hair. Your features are too lovely to hide. Hours later, when I stared into the mirror, I gasped. My hair shone with a gentle chestnut hue, my cheeks glowed faintly, and for the first time in years, I recognized the woman staring back. Not the frail shadow Michael had abandoned, but Julia, the Julia who once walked hand in hand with Vincent through sunlit parks, promising forever. The next evening arrived with startling swiftness. At precisely 7 o'clock, a sleek black car stopped outside my home, gleaming like polished obsidian. How to get it? My neighbors peeked from their curtains, whispering, their eyes wide with curiosity. To them, I must have looked like Cinderella plucked from her cinders, stepping into a carriage bound for a ball. The driver bowed politely as he held the door, treating me with the respect I thought the world had forgotten I deserved. The Palace Hotel was more magnificent than I had ever imagined. Crystal chandeliers spilled light like waterfalls of diamonds. Marble pillars soared skyward. The carpets beneath my feet were so thick that each step sank silently as though into clouds. My heart raced as the hotel manager greeted me, personally escorting me to the restaurant where Vincent awaited. And then I saw him. He stood by a window table, tall, elegant in a gray suit, his white hair glowing beneath the soft lights. When his eyes found mine, recognition flared instantly, and his entire face lit with a joy so pure it nearly broke me. Julia, he breathed, stepping forward, his arms open, his smile trembling with decades of longing. My dear, beautiful Julia. His embrace enveloped me warm, strong, carrying with it 50 years of withheld affection. You are more beautiful than I remembered, he whispered into my ear. And I believed him, because the tremor in his voice held no lies, only truth. We sat by the window overlooking the hotel's gardens, golden light spilling through the glass. A waiter appeared with champagne. Vincent had ordered it in advance, waiting for this moment. To reunions worth waiting for, he toasted, raising his glass, and to second chances the world rarely grants. For 3 hours we spoke without pause, about our youth, our lives apart, and the winding roads that had finally brought us back. Vincent shared stories of his medical career, his travels, his late wife's kindness, and the emptiness that lingered after her passing. I spoke of my marriage, of years of sowing and sacrifice of Michael, but I left unsaid the cruelest truth of my present humiliation. As dinner waned, Vincent reached across the table, his hand trembling as it closed over mine. Julia, he said softly, I know this may sound sudden, but I have no wish to waste another day. Come live with me, not as a guest, but as the partner you are always meant to be. My home is empty. My heart has waited too long. I want to fill both with you. His words were the balm my wounded soul had begged for. Tears blurred my sight as I whispered, Vincent, I don't know what to say. This feels like a dream. Then say yes, he urged gently, squeezing my hand. You say yes, and let me give you the life you always deserved. That night, he took me to see his house, a grand mansion beyond the city, its gardens sprawling, fountains whispering, hallways adorned with art and books. He showed me a suite with a balcony overlooking the garden. This could be your room, he said softly, but only until you're ready to share mine. I stared at him, his patience, his respect, his devotion shining in every gesture, and I felt my soul return to me. Yes, I said firmly, my voice clear. Yes, I want to live with you. I want to be happy again. His smile illuminated the vast house more brightly than any chandelier. When he embraced me, I knew I had finally come home. The following days passed like a fairy tale. His staff packed my meager belongings and carried them to the mansion, treating them with more care than Michael had ever shown. Vincent draped me in new clothes, took me to restaurants I had only seen in magazines, and walked with me through the city as though I were the most precious treasure on earth. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was living. Yesterday, I turned 78, and Vincent, with that boundless tenderness that has never ceased to astonish me, organized a surprise celebration in the gardens of our home. When I stepped outside, fairy lights shimmered through the trees like captured stars. Tables glowed with candles and crystal holders, and laughter floated through the air as familiar faces awaited me. All the women from our foundation were there, radiant in their resilience, Mian, carrying stories of pain transformed into strength. Michael stood quietly near the fountain, no longer the proud, dismissive son who once turned me away, but a man who had learned humility and gratitude. Beside him was his new companion, a gentle, hard-working young woman who greeted me with warmth that felt entirely genuine. And there was Linda, my old neighbor, laughing like the girl she once was, her eyes shining as she teased me for looking like a queen at her coronation, seated. When Vincent appeared with a towering cake adorned with roses, everyone gathered round to sing. I closed my eyes as the candles flickered, their glow soft against my face, and for a moment I felt the weight of every year, every tear shed in loneliness, every scar left by betrayal, every night I thought my story was over. Yet here I stood, wrapped in love, surrounded by people who honored me not for what I could give them, but for who I was. As I leaned forward to blow out the candles, I made only one wish: that every woman who has ever felt invisible, discarded, or diminished might one day find her own miracle, her own Vincent, her own new beginning, her own reminder that she is worthy of joy. Later that evening, one of the women from our foundation, a frail widow who had arrived months earlier with nothing but despair in her eyes, came to me trembling. She clutched my hands and whispered through tears, "You saved my life, Mrs. Julia. I believed I was finished. I believed I had no worth left. But you showed me I still had more to give and more to receive." Her words pierced me deeper than any jewel or luxury could, for they reflected the truth I had been learning every day: that sometimes we must be broken to discover the strength hidden inside us. Sometimes we must lose everything to realize we deserve far more than we once settled for. As I stood beneath the twinkling lights, watching Vincent smile as he moved through the crowd, offering wine and laughter, I understood something with absolute clarity. Happiness is not measured in the years we've lived, but in the moments we choose to embrace love. Rock bottom, I realized, is not the end. It is the ground upon which we rebuild, taller, stronger, and wiser. And so I say this to anyone who feels diminished or forgotten: never let another soul convince you that you are disposable. Do not hand over your joy to those who trample it. Do not starve on crumbs of affection when you are worthy of the entire feast. Life is too brief to spend it shrinking yourself to fit inside someone else's small vision of you. Stand tall. Seek the love, the respect, the recognition you deserve. If one door closes, wait, another will open, one that leads to light. Tonight, as I put down my pen, Vincent is waiting for me by the garden gate, his hands stretched out as if we were young again, ready for an evening walk beneath the stars. I will take his hand, and together we will wander the moonlit paths like two teenagers discovering love for the first time. At 78, I finally know the truth that had eluded me for so long: that real love does not bow to age, that dignity once reclaimed can never be taken again, and that happiness, true enduring happiness, is always worth the patience it demands. And you who read my words now, what are you waiting for? The life you deserve is still out there, waiting for you to claim it.